Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode. We're going to continue today with the Tree Designer tool, which we mentioned in a couple of recordings already. And there has been quite a lot going on with this tool. As you can see here, what we are currently displaying is significantly different from what we had at the end of the recording number 2. We're going to try to cover all of the changes, but the two most significant ones are really what we're seeing here. The fact that we have support now for display of the leaves, and also we have this kind of animation of the branches, and it's also moving the leaves along the way. So yeah, we're just going to mention this with a bit more details. Alright, so just like last time, I just got into the habit of preparing some kind of overview document like that to figure out where we're going. The first couple of points that we're going to see are first the updated GUI, and also at the same time we're going to discuss this updated environment map. So this is basically the state of the tree that we had at the end of the previous recording. So we were able already to generate all the levels of branches, and we have demonstrated already how you can manipulate those branches. Now, concerning the GUI itself, as you can see, I decided to put the parameters for the tree in different tabs. For instance, we have everything concerning the curvature here, so mainly to manipulate angles. This tab here is more about the resolution of the tree, so if you want to add more segment on the branches, that's going to be in the curve resolution, for instance, and so on. And we have those new tabs that we're going to see in a moment. Next thing which is also new is this environment that we see around the scene now. So I decided to go with a forest environment, which seems more appropriate at the previous circles map. And the new thing here also is that for this environment loading, we are now using OpenEXR. So the file that we have is a EXR file. It's a pretty big file actually, and it's representing the forest environment in the equi-rectangular format. Actually, we have updated the support for rendering an environment map with this equi-rectangular textures, and this was in fact topic of another recording, so you could have a look at this one if you are interested in this subject. Now, concerning the real changes on the Tree Designer tool itself, the first thing I introduced is this split branches support. This is mentioned in the reference paper in this section, the stem splits, and the idea is described a little bit here with those diagrams. So you can basically split your current stem into multiple stems, but still at the same level, so you're not actually generating children's yet. So in the Tree Designer tool, we can handle the splitting configuration with this entry here. And for instance, if here I decide to specify that I want 2 splits, then you're going to get 3 branches at this level 0, because the splits are going to be added to the main branch. But you could also have a partial number of split. So in this case, you may sometime get 3, sometime get only 2. So if you change the seed, you will see that in some cases you have 2 branches like that, and in other cases we get 3 branches like this case. And also on the curvature tab, you will have support now to control the split angle that you're going to use to decide how much those branches are moving away one from another. So again, this is specified per level, so this value can be reduced here or increased, and so on. Let's get back to no splitting for the moment, because in fact there is also something which is still work in progress. We have a bug with the new mechanism that I have implemented to support the animation, the wind animation. So in this new system, the splitting is not working properly yet, but I'm going to fix that eventually. Next point we need to mention is the support for the envelope of the tree, or actually the pruning of the tree. Again, this is mentioned in the paper. There is a dedicated section, the pruning section here, which is describing this kind of two-part shape that you're going to use to figure out if a branch should be cut, or actually if the length of the branch should be reduced or not, if it's touching the shape. And in the Tree Designer tool, we have this dedicated pruning tab now, where you can control all those parameters. So you can just play a bit with this, and it's going to basically produce different type of shape. I'm not quite sure what I'm using here, so yeah, maybe a good idea would be to display the pruning shape itself around the tree to actually know what you're doing, but it's not available yet, so I'll think about it. Alright, and now on the more interesting part. First, the leaves. So you have a dedicated tab again, so for the leaves, and we can enable the rendering of the leaves with this button, except that right now I need to toggle this on. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to remove the leaves. And okay, so we can control a lot of parameters again. So for instance, the length value for every single leaf. So if you get a bit closer, you will see that this can be increased or reduced. Also, there is the X ratio. X is actually the width of the leaf in this case. So if you make this very small, you're going to produce very long looking leaves like this. Alright, you can control also the number of leaves, so the density. When we change that, it's actually changing the random number state, so it's actually changing the shape of the tree also at the same time. But for the moment I want to keep this pretty low, because for the animation part we need to discuss that. Okay, and you can also toggle the orientation of the tree. Put this back like that. Right now you're actually orienting all the leaves up. So this is what I tried to explain with this small diagram here. When you have the leaves on a real tree, they are going to be mostly oriented towards the up direction, because that's where the light is coming from. So the sun is moving every day, so the leaves are going to try to collect the maximum light. And in fact, by default, if you generate your leaves with random settings, you would rather get something like that. So all the leaves are actually completely messy and oriented in different directions. That's why we can actually force orienting the leaves toward the up direction, but you have a coefficient here to control the intensity of this effect. So maybe you don't want them to be really properly up oriented, so you can change that here. In fact, this is also another section which is mentioned here in the paper. Not quite sure about the formulas here. I might not be using this exactly, but yeah, I'm doing some kind of matrix manipulation and it's working just fine. Another thing concerning the leaves is that we have two modes to render them. We can either use a texture, as I've shown just before. This is using a texture, or you have another mode which is going to just render the leaves with a mesh generation system. So there's no texture involved here. And the cool thing is, with this mesh generation here, you can actually control the resolution. If you try to pay attention to a single leaf, for instance, so this one in the center, you see that right now it's kind of a quad shape, but if I increase this resolution here, you get more vertices to do the rendering, so you can build a smooth shape for your leaf, but of course using more vertices, so you want to not increase that too much. And another key benefit with using this mesh rendering is that we actually can use the depth buffer to ensure that the leaves are rendered properly one on top of another. So you don't have any kind of misordering issue here. But if we switch to the texture rendering mode, in this case you can see, for instance, if you look in this area, you see that there is a shape here for the texture representing the leaf where we have alpha transparency, and this is rendered on top of other leaves, and so it's preventing the rendering of the other leaves in this area, even if we're not actually showing anything, because the depth value is already closer to us. So yes, this is kind of an issue with the texture rendering that I need to think about and solve properly. Alright, and finally we get to the wind animation part. So again, we have a dedicated tab to activate the wind animation, and we also need to disable that for the moment. And here we have the control for the wind speed and the time speed also, so you can make this faster, but it kind of doesn't look very realistic if you put two big values here. It's the same thing, in fact, for the wind speed. For low wind speed value, it feels okay, but the moment you try to use bigger wind speed values, the movement seems a bit too erratic, so it's not really realistic anymore. So again, there is a dedicated section containing the wind sway in the original paper, and I try to use those formulas here, and for me this is the corresponding code, but at the end I made some modification. I'm not exactly using the same factors anymore. I think it was dividing by 15 in the paper. Yes. And here also I'm not using exactly the same thing because it produced very strange result in my case. And also the way I'm currently working on that, I'm still using the legacy system because initially I was not really considering the animation part, so I was just generating all the segments that I need to do the rendering of a single tree. So this is what I'm calling here the reference data. So, and I'm still generating that normally. But at the same time, I'm also extending the generation system to produce some what I call raw data, raw segments. And the raw segments are actually building some kind of skeleton for the tree, and you're going to use this skeleton then to apply some small modification from one node to the next one, and this is how you're going to apply the time animation. And we have then another mechanism taking this as input, applying the time modification to generate again the final segment for the tree that you want to actually display. And the good thing is, if I basically disable the tree animation for a moment, I can use dynamically generated data here and compare that with the reference data, and they're going to be exactly the same thing. So that's how I'm actually trying to validate the generation of the raw data for the moment, and eventually then I should be able to get rid of the reference data, which should at least simplify a little bit the generation process. Another key issue here is that this animation computation, which is done in this function, generate segment, that's where you're going to go from your raw segment to the final segment data. And this is currently done on the CPU side, which means it's very slow. And you can see that, in fact, if you look at the frame rate here, currently it's only 62 frames, and if you just disable that, you will instantly get to a higher value. And in fact, the thing is, it depends here on the number of stem, number of branches, number of leaves that you want to animate. And if we go on the leaf page, for instance, and we try to increment this value to 20, you will see that the frame rate is going even lower, and it could go much lower if you increase this further. So yeah, in the end, this wind animation feature is in fact something which is very complex. So this is what I mentioned here. I think I really need to make another dedicated video for this, trying to explain a bit more carefully what I was doing. And at the same time, I'm going to refactor the corresponding code, and I'm going to try to implement this directly in WGSL, so executing the animation on the GPU directly, which should hopefully prevent this low performance issue. But anyway, this is it, guys, concerning the overview on the latest features introduced in the Tree Designer tool. I hope you enjoyed that. And as usual, if you have any question or you want to know more about something, just leave me a comment and I try to answer as soon as possible. And otherwise, as I said, I keep working on that anyway, because I really want to get this animation done on the GPU side, and I'll let you know as soon as this is ready for another recording. So see you next time. Bye bye.